So today we're spending a little time talking with Jeff Atwood of Epic Environmental about mold and odor remediation, water damage restoration, and other environmental cleanups. As a real estate agent, I have certainly run into mold situations a time or two with homeowners. So Jeff, tell us about Epic Environmental and the services you offer in relation to real estate.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. This company is a hybrid of restoration services and forensic cleaning services. So on the front end, we do water damage mitigation dryouts in the event that there's floods or leakages. We bring our equipment in, such as dehumidifiers, drying fans to dry out a structure. Maybe we can do water extraction. In the event that a leak has gone on for a while, mold may set up. And so in that case, we would have to do mold remediation. So that is the first component of it. The second component is we're used by law enforcement and coroners for biohazard trauma crime scene cleanup. So we've assisted many counties with that. We've even remediated a couple of meth labs, which is not super common, but it's nice to be able to offer that service. So we really like to approach this from a multifaceted standpoint of having multiple skill sets. Everyone who works in these services with Epic Environmental has a healthcare background. And so we're all very interested in infection control and making sure that whatever is dirty or has contaminated the property has been perfectly remediated.
Okay. All right. So a few of the most common misconceptions that I've heard about mold from homeowners is that it's only dangerous if it's black mold and that you only have to worry about it after a water leak. Can you help clear that up and tell us about common mold that we should be concerned about and how mold actually starts?
Yeah. So whenever there is a moisture intrusion event in a property, whether it's from a leak or a flood or just bad ventilation, that moisture will encourage mold spores to grow. Mold spores are very, very tiny. They can actually find a little divot on your sheetrock and embed themselves in that divot and actually start to grow from there. So if there's a lot of moisture, it will grow, and especially if it's dark. So mold likes moisture and it likes darkness, and it can actually grow within about 36 hours. So it doesn't take long to occur. There are many different kinds of mold. In fact, in the restoration industry, we're hesitant about using the word mold because mold is an actual diagnosis from a laboratory. They will take a sample of it, look it under the microscope, and say, yep, this is mold. And it has a legal connotation because in the insurance industries, they don't really want to pay for mold because since mold is somewhat gradual, they may view it as neglect, like you didn't address your water problem first and you neglected it and now it's formed and we don't want to pay for it. So there are different types of mold, or microbial growth is the buzzword that we like to use, that will grow. You can take you can spend hours online looking at different types of mold and what's common, and they're long and they're difficult to pronounce. But just because the mold is dark doesn't mean it's the black mold that is so toxic. But when I remediate, I don't differentiate between molds. I don't discriminate between molds. If I see microbial growth, I'm going to attack it with everything I have as if it's the worst, most dangerous, toxic environment that. So we have several different ways of approaching this. When I identify the mold, or you can smell the mold, the first thing we do, and I don't know if this is kind of leading into other questions you have, but the first thing that we like to do is we will remove any affected material. So if sheetrock has been contaminated, and it's on the backside of the sheetrock inside the wall, then that has to be removed. If it's just a slight touch and it's only topical, that can probably be cleaned and we can save that building material. But once we remove the bad area, then we'll have to go through any other areas that may have touched. We'll use a HEPA vacuum to vacuum up the spores, and then we'll spray it with an antimicrobial. Some antimicrobials are aggressive, like a hydrogen peroxide. It's almost, for the women out there who might be viewing this, for the women who bleach their hair, there's a hydrogen peroxide that'll almost burn your skin. Mm-hmm. It's almost that strength. So it's very aggressive on the shell of the mold spore. It'll disintegrate it. And it'll also it'll fizz up. So it's a good indicator of something maybe you didn't see because it was in the shadow, but because it's foamed up, when it's hit that biologic material, it's a good indicator of what needs to be further cleaned or remediated. Another antimicrobial that I'll use is based out of thyme, thymol, which is like an essential oil. A lot of people might be familiar with that, and I like that because it's safe for the environment. Dogs and cats and children, if they're exposed to it for whatever reason, they're not going to react to it, and it has a nice, pleasant scent. So that's a good cleaning agent. It's also a disinfectant too. So yeah. So it's the demolition, it's the HEPA vacuuming, it's the cleaning. Those are the main steps that we take. And in some cases, if I have like a dark closet or a crawl space or something as an additive, I might boost a UVC light in there and douse it for a few minutes with the ultraviolet light just to kind of kill whatever. But the main thing that we want to remember is just because you've killed a mold spore doesn't mean it's not still dangerous. It has something in it called a mycotoxin. So if you inhale that mycotoxin, it could still get you sick. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier, which I didn't address, some people using bleach and so forth on mold. It doesn't always kill the mold. In some cases, it can actually make it worse because the top of the mold spore might have been bleached, so it looks like it's gone. But as we mentioned, those little divots in building materials, the backside of that mold can be protected. For example, on sheetrock, you spray water on it, that little mold spore is inside that divot, mm-hmm. and then that starts to swell up. So the backside of that mold spore in here is protected. Okay, and now you've just given it water. So you've actually fed the mold humidity, so it could actually cause it to come back. So we don't recommend using that. It might work well on mildew in the bathroom, but they're a little bit different in their structure and how they react. But certainly mold remediation needs to be taken very seriously, and it should be done by a professional.
Okay, yeah, I was definitely curious about the bleach because I had a homeowner just recently. She had mold on her bathroom ceiling, and it had been there for a while, and she did try the bleaching method a few times to try to get rid of it. So thank you for addressing that.
Yeah.
Well, all of this is great information. I'm listening and I'm thinking, trying to look at it from the standpoint of a client. It sounds a little expensive. What can you tell me about the costs?
Most of the water damage costs are covered under insurance, mm-hmm. So it'll be a claim. What we try to minimize is any discussion about mold. Insurance companies don't want to hear about mold, as I explained before. They might consider it neglect. Some even have a $10,000 cap on mold associated damage. If there's moldy walls that have to have the sheetrock cut out and new sheetrock and then painting, if there's flooring involved, all those are factors that come into the, as part of the process of remediating a property that's been affected by damage like this. So what we would focus on is the moisture content. First of all, if there's mold, there probably is moisture content. So if we can use our moisture meters to document that there is moisture that needs to be dried, then certain situations an insurance company might not pay for it. If they consider it an act of God, like the stream up the road, changed course and came through your front door, they might not cover that. But, things associated with your plumbing and so forth, it should be covered under an insurance claim. So if someone is selling their house or they're trying to buy a house and there's, some moisture issues, you'd call in a professional, let them do a moisture assessment, map it out, get proof of that the problem exists, and then they can propose a plan of action, to dry it out.
Okay. Insurance companies can sometimes be a little difficult to work with. If my insurance company happens to push back or fight coverage for this sort of thing, what happens then?
So your mitigation company or your restoration company, their agreement is with the homeowner or the insured, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have an agreement with the insurance company, so we're third party to them. So we're not really authorized to make that argument for them. We can present the facts, we can show documentation, right, proof. But if there continues to be a problem where the insurance company denies the claim or they're being difficult, you can engage the services of an individual called a public adjuster. A public adjuster is similar to the desk adjuster that you would talk to with your insurance company that's handling the claim, but he actually has a little more power. His goal is to get you covered for as much as possible. And his motivation for that is because he's being paid on the size of your claim. So if you've got a $10,000 claim, but $30,000 worth of damage, he's going to try to get you $50,000 of coverage so that he can put a little bit of that in his pocket as well. So, insurance is one of those things where we don't like to see people abuse it, obviously. But the insurance companies can be hard, and they can, you've paid premiums for months and years at a time, and you pay all this money, and suddenly you're in an emergency situation and you can't get something covered. It seems unethical. So that's when you have to go to measures like engaging the services of a public adjuster who will fight the fight for you, and he can legally negotiate it. He will take a percentage of the overall size of the claim for his own pocket. It could be 10, 15, 20, 30%. I don't know. They're all a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But he would actually control the process for you, take a lot of stress off of you. He would make the calls to the vendors. He would be in charge of receiving the check, cutting checks to the vendors, and then anything left over, would go to the homeowner or whatever. So, but he kind of becomes your advocate in that regard. So in certain situations, they can be quite helpful.
That's good to know, a public adjuster. All right, great information. Well, Jeff, thank you for breaking that down for us a little bit more. Is there anything that you want to add that I haven't asked about?
So one thing I thought about is in regard to real estate is if a house has been vacant for a while, when you open it up and the power's been shut off, it may have an odor, a mildewy or a moldy smell. And that's just because, again, the air is not moving and so forth. And so one of the ways that you can treat that is if you don't see visible mold is to have the AC ducts cleaned. Also, ozone machines can be ran, maybe overnight with air movers. Ozone is a heavy gas, so it typically sinks to the floor. So it needs, forced air to kind of bring it up and move it about, maybe even place it by a vent return, the intake, so that it goes through the AC systems. So those are all things that, you can do to kind of move that along. But if the mold is just light, it's formed on the walls or whatever, just because it's a hot summer day and it's been humidity, a remediator like myself could come in and spray the walls and wipe them down, basically maybe run the fans and defuse for a day or two and call it a day. It wouldn't be as intrusive as having to go in and do demolition on moldy properties. But again, that's, if it's just a smell, I would start with the AC ducts, getting them cleaned out, professionally cleaned, and maybe run an ozone machine.
Okay, and you said that process usually takes just a day or two to complete?
Yeah, if it's light, it could be anywhere from 1 to 3 days. If a property has been really damaged and is wet or there's a lot of mold, it may take 3 to 5 days just to dry it out, make sure that the air has been cleaned. We use machines called air scrubbers that are 3 layers of filters. There's a carbon filter, a middle filter, and another particulate filter, and they all clean the air or scrub the air particulates and catch it so that whatever air is generated in there doesn't have any remaining, mycotoxins or spores or anything else in the air. So it all depends. It's kind of a customized approach. There's no one size fits all for each problem. It really just depends. But any contractor like myself would come in and do an investigation, take some documentation, take some moisture readings, pictures, and they should be able to give you a scope. And in most cases, even a general estimate. It may change because sometimes when you peel back the layers, you find more damage that you didn't see at first. So you have to be kind of flexible with that. But they should be able to give you a written scope and an estimate just to move forward. And that way, the homeowner or the insured needs to feel really comfortable with the process, because it is intrusive. It can be scary. It's stressful. And so, we understand that. We want to try to mitigate that emotion as well.
Right. Well, I'll definitely be sharing this information with future homeowners. I think having a plan of action when these problems arise can make all the difference when it comes to minimizing damage. So thank you for taking the time to share this information and preparing us for when we run into these issues. So the name of your company is Epic Environmental. Tell us how we can reach you.
Yeah, it's Epic Environmental Decon, and you can reach me at Epoch Decon. That's EPOCHDECON.com. And, call us anytime. We're 24/7.
Excellent. And I'll have all that information on my website as well, at NikkiPitts.com. Just click on the resources tab. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thanks, Nikki.
Talking to you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.